Emily. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation on building value and innovation ecosystems. We're really excited to have you. You're probably one of our first people from the other side of the pond. So very excited to have this conversation.
Amazing.
Yeah. So Emily, as someone, why don't you first start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in the position that you are at Republic Europe, and tell us a little bit about what you all do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, first of all. And yeah, I hope I don't let the Brits down in the conversation. So I'm the Global Head of Partnerships at Republic. We are a equity investment platform. So we essentially work with startups to raise capital from their communities and our community for equity in their company. We also are a fund of funds, so we work with doing the same thing, but for funds, getting LPs into their funds. So we have a very broad view of the startup ecosystem. We've built it globally because Republic operate in the US and the UK, Europe and Asia. So we definitely have our finger on the pulse, I would say, when it comes to startups and raising. My background personally, so I ran a startup, a food and drinks brand here in the UK for around 6 years. We distributed it globally in the US and the UK, in the Middle East. And then I joined Cedars about nearly 3 years ago now as the head of partnerships for UK and Europe, and then was brought in to do US partnerships as well when we were acquired by Republic.
Awesome. So as someone, deeply involved in the global partnerships at Republic Europe and being a founder as well, can you share with us a little bit of the current landscape of startup funding? What trends are you noticing, particularly in the realm of sort of non-traditional startup funding?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a big slowdown in traditional funds. So VC investments have slowed. There's a few reasons for that. I think there's been a slowdown in distribution gains for LPs in funds, so they're not getting as much kind of investment back from the funds that they are investing in. So their funding's drying up a little bit. So funds aren't getting the funding that they need. Therefore, distributing it into startups is becoming more challenging. Their criteria is getting more difficult. And then we're seeing that ripple effect across the ecosystem. So then people are having to turn to alternative ways of raising finance in order to fill their round. So we're now seeing a growth in places like Republic Europe and Republic in the US, where people are looking to turn to crowdfunding. How do they involve their communities? We're seeing a more lean into grants and government funding opportunities. We're seeing revenue-based financing companies grow, or like angel syndicates. How do we, work with SPVs? So there's people are just needing to look at alternative sources to be able to fill up their rounds. And I think that's a knock-on effect from what we're seeing in the wider market. And there's a whole bunch of reasons from, slowdown in economy that has a knock-on effect on that, to investors looking to diversify their portfolios and all sorts.
Yeah. So what are some of the challenges that like founders and entrepreneurs face when it comes to securing funding? And you mentioned a couple, just with the global slowdown, effects of COVID, investors just not getting the ROI that they're looking for. And you know that Republic is a crowdfunding platform, but how does sort of Republic think about addressing these challenges?
Yeah, so one of the main challenges we see over and over again is people struggling to secure lead investment. So in order to kind of go on to do a crowdfund with somebody like Republic, we kind of expected a certain portion of the raise to be committed from a lead investor already. And it's sometimes a little bit of a chicken and egg situation when you're a startup, because you're going out to a pool of investors and they're saying, yeah, we'll kind of look to invest, but first you need another investor to lead the round. So it's about getting that commitment from that first investor can be challenging. we can definitely support with providing people with the tools to go out and start engaging with their investors, with their communities, start gaining the interest from people in your network. One of the things that people, I think, don't really realize is how often their networks are engaged because they haven't asked them. And your network is so much broader than you really realize when you start going out to people. People come out from the woodwork. And yeah, it's I think we enable people, or we can work with people to access maybe people or pools of investors that they might not be aware that they have. And then we can also work with our partner networks. We have, incredible VC networks we can start connecting people with. So we try and act as much of an ecosystem connector as we are a platform where people can raise from our community as well.
So what are some secrets to getting, because it sounds like when you talk about your network, it goes beyond friends and family, right? What are some secret tricks of the trade, if you will, to get your network activated if you're a founder and you're looking for that initial funding?
I think like the trick is seeing every single person that you meet as a potential investor. So building up that database, even if you're not raising currently, just building that up so it's there to activate when you are ready in fundraising, I think is so important. So every time you go to an event, a networking event, reaching out to ex-colleagues that you've been in front of, your community who's buying your product or using your service, being able to engage them, they're all potential investors. And because someone like Republic and our infrastructure enables people to come in for like a £10 minimum, so people can invest as little as £10, literally an everyday investor can kind of come on, and you can just build that up. And if you build up a community of several hundred investors, each investing, a few £100 each, that's going to build up very, very quickly, and can really impact your round.
And how does the ROI work then for the investors, for folks that are coming into that crowdfunding round?
It's the same as it would in kind of VC. So it's on exit that they would realize their return.
Interesting. Okay. And so, given the rise of sort of alternative fundraising options, how do you see the role of traditional investors changing, if at all?
I see the world's really starting to merge a lot more. So where you've got your professional investors and your retail or everyday investors, I find that there's going to be a lot more combination rounds. So people doing a portion of their round with VC, but maybe not filling it fully from VC and allocating a portion to crowdfunding, or an allocation with revenue-based financing, or some allocation to grant. I think your round now has to be made up of multiple avenues instead of just going, VC filling the whole thing. And that might happen, right? You might be a company where you go to VC and they'll fill the entire round, and that's what you want to do. You might want to do a full crowdfund round and just have smaller ticketed investors fully filling up your round. I think it's really, really important as a startup to know your options at the time of your where you're at as a startup, what sector you're in, what stage you're at, what options are available to you, so that you can make the right decision for your company at that time. Seems to be this like golden halo that's around VC funding, that's what people go for, but that might not be right for you. The terms might not be right for you. The stage of where you're at might not be right to do VC funding. Even if you're at the stage where you're doing your Series A, Series B, looking for VC funding, that still might not be the right avenue for your business. So I think it's just understanding all the options available and then choosing how you build that round based on that.
And you talked a little bit about, the golden halo, that everybody's sort of end goal is to somehow become a VC-backed company or startup. What are some other common misconceptions that you find founders and entrepreneurs have as they're fundraising, and how can they be overcome?
I think a few I see quite often is that fundraising is either quick or easy to do. I don't think any avenue is either of those things. I think it's a lot more challenging, especially in today's market, to raise capital. So you have to be quite savvy in terms of what you do and how you do it. And also be very conscious of the time it takes, no matter what avenue you go down. So, VCs can take anywhere from a few months to years to build out, depending on what, round you're going for and the complexity of the round. Crowdfunding with someone like Republic can take anywhere from, a couple of months to, 4 or 5 months. So I think it's about knowing when you need to raise capital and then kind of working back from there and understanding like what do you need to have in place to get you to the point where you can do a successful round with whichever avenue you're going down, but having everything in place to go so that you're not getting to the point where you're raising capital and you don't have anything ready. That everyone always says raise capital in a position of strength, so raise when you've got money in the bank, essentially.
It is a chicken and egg problem then, right? Because you need to have that initial funding to be able to go and get, like, money gets more money. And so how do you what kind of advice would you give to founders and entrepreneurs that are looking for funding in this? You mentioned, consider everybody an investor, look at multiple different options. But can you talk a little bit about tactically, like what kind of advice would you provide founders or entrepreneurs who are going after seeking funding in today's market? Like, what are some practical things that they could do today to get to be in that position of strength when they're ready to raise a round?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of things. I would say educate yourself is one. Make sure you know all the options that are available to you for your round. I would then, is there anybody in your community that, your startup community, so other startups that have done similar raises that you can reach out to? So there's a real strength in building a community around you, not just of potential investors, but potential, other startups in your space, other startups that aren't in your space, partners that can support you, like ecosystem builders. Just build out your network, because you never know where you need support and where that value can be, where that value you can get from. So definitely build up your network as much as possible. And have as much ready to go. So just have all your ducks in a row. Make sure that you have your financial models up to date and in place. A lot of people come to us and they don't even have a financial model, and we're like, we need you to you need to have this kind of stuff. This is like imperative things that you need. And then just an idea of who your investors are. So like I said, start building up that database of investors. And it can be as simple as starting to reach out to friends and family. If you're very early stage, if you're pre-seed, just starting to reach out to your personal network. And that can go as far as, just not just friends and family, it could be ex-colleagues, LinkedIn contacts, to start building up and reaching out. I don't think there's any shame in going out and saying, look, I'm potentially going to be raising a round. Would you be interested in potentially investing? And you might find that such a positive response that comes back. And if people say no, you're no worse off. So, don't be ashamed to go out there and ask your community what their interest might be.
So can you walk us through the experience of a company, a startup company that's raising capital through Republic? What does that look like? What do they need to come in with? How long would it take? What kind of support does Republic provide? Just give us a sense of what that experience is.
Yeah, so typically it starts with a call with one of our associates. So a lot of them are sector specialists. They've gone through multiple rounds of people, so they're very well versed in what lands well with the Republic community, and know what kind of to look for in startups. So your first call will be with one of them, where you'll go through and they'll ask you lots and lots of questions about your business, where it's at, what you're looking to do with the raise, how much you're raising, the team, background. They'll do like a full shebang on your business. And then after that, if it's something that we think would be suitable for our community as well as your own, and if we would understand if you do have a community we can tap into as well, then we will move to building out the terms of the raise. So we'd look to kind of sign an engagement letter, and then we would pass you to what we call our investment associate team, where you'd get a dedicated account manager who will work with you to build out your essentially your page and your pitch to investors. And that will include everything from your top line information, any key highlights that you want to highlight to investors, your pitch, your potentially your video. It's not a requirement, but we do say videos can be quite a powerful tool. And then we'll do all the DD, so just making sure that all that information stacks up, because we obviously represent the interest of the investors on our platform as well, so we want to make sure the information is accurate and correct. And then you will go out to your own community, so you'll be in private mode for a week, where you're engaging your own community to onboard them first with a private link, private access, so that they kind of can get in on the round early. And then as soon as you hit a pre-agreed kind of target, so we'll kind of work with you to set certain targets, we'll then go live to the Republic community, and then you'll have a month, so 4 weeks, to then fill up the rest of the round and hit target. A lot of people go into overfunding, so you'll often see the bar and you'll say 100%, and then it'll go beyond that, and that's because people will set essentially a stretch goal of where they want to go to, and that's based on how much equity they want to give away in their business in that round, and how much they're happy to raise. And then once you complete the round, you can choose whether to come down at any point once you've hit that 100%, or keep going right until the end of the 4 weeks. And then we go into closing, final DD, and then all the final kind of legal work, and you get the money. All in all, probably about 4 to 6 weeks.
Wow. 4 to 6 weeks. That's an accelerated timeline for fundraising. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through some examples of successful fundraising campaigns that have been facilitated by Republic, and what were maybe some of the key factors that contributed to that success? Anything that jumps out at you?
Yeah, so we're really sector agnostic, and we work with startups right from kind of seed to Series B and beyond. Our kind of sweet spot is really around kind of seed Series A raises, but we've done the likes of here in the UK and Europe, the likes of Revolut, which is a banking fintech company. We did them a few years back. And for them, it was around how do they really engage their community. So they had a really strong community they could tap into. And the idea is they wanted to bring ambassadors as part of their business, and they build that business model around ambassadors that are their customers, but also that have got equity shares in the business. So that was really big for them. Just last year, we did a company called Green Lithium, who are actually a B2B clean tech business. And there's a real misconception about crowdfunding being solely for like B2C businesses. We actually did, in the UK and Europe, we did more B2B raises than B2C raises in 2023. And I think the reason why Green Lithium did so well, so they raised, I think, about 4.7 million from just over 3,000 investors. And the reason they did so well is because they are really in sustainability, and we're seeing a real move in people wanting to invest in, clean tech and sustainable businesses. So they did phenomenally well because there was such an appetite from our audience to invest in that sector. But we've done a lot of food and drinks brands. We've done a lot of fintech, prop tech, legal tech, any tech. We're now doing a lot in AI, as a lot of other people are. So what we see is typically what is trending generally in the ecosystem will also translate on our platform. So our investors will also be seeking similar opportunities to what we're seeing in the rest of the startup ecosystem.
So you talked a lot about, partnerships and collaboration and networking with your investors and sort of making sure that, you could keep your eye out for anybody who could potentially be an investor, whether it's a LinkedIn contact or someone else. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe, we also know that partnerships and collaboration are very important in ecosystem building, right? To create a very supportive ecosystem for founders and entrepreneurs beyond just that investment. So can you tell us a little bit about how maybe you collaborate, how Republic collaborates with other incubators, accelerators, startup support organizations in the region?
Yeah, and I totally agree with your point on this. I always kind of make the analogy of it takes a village to raise a baby in the same way it takes a community to raise a startup. So yeah, I think it's really important to it's important to us at Republic to not only support startups with their raise, but how do we support them with everything outside of that as well. And that's my job in partnerships, is to collaborate with external partners in order to create value add opportunities for the businesses coming into our ecosystem. So a recent one, we've just launched a AI accelerator with Microsoft this week. So we'll be kind of supporting with upskilling AI companies in the UK and Europe. But we do a lot with our agency partners, so marketing, video support. We have deals in place with tax companies, law firms, you name it. We've got somebody that we can engage with if you're needing support in a certain area. And I think it's just so important, because as a startup, it's a minefield out there. You just sometimes don't know where to turn, and there's so many companies doing like the same thing. It's sometimes hard to decipher who the right one for you is. So often relying on someone who is really heavily involved in the ecosystem and has built out contacts and it's kind of been through it is really useful, I think, for our startups and our community.
So yeah, and I always like to say that as well, that it takes a village to raise a baby, but a community to raise a startup, because really you can't do this. It's too hard to do it alone. It's such a disservice to you. You just think that you can do it by yourself. And the nice thing is there are so many supportive organizations and institutions out there. It's just a matter of you finding the right one that is a good fit for you, for whatever your particular problem is at that point. So just staying on that sort of theme of global partnerships, what are your thoughts on cross-border investments? Do you see investors on Republic, are they sort of investing more in a specific, like, are they more focused on regional investments? Like, do you see folks from Europe and UK investing in European and UK companies, or do you see that it's much more sort of borderless? Because we've heard, talking through to a few folks here through these conversations, there is a concept that capital is borderless, and there a lot of movement. There's a lot of VC movement that's outside of a particular, especially in the US now. I mean, 2/3 of the VC money from the US is moving outside of the US. But on the other hand, I've also heard that investors like to invest in their own regions until and unless they don't find something to invest in. So I'd love to hear what your perspective is on this and what your experience has been.
Yeah, I mean, I do believe we are moving towards a more global investing space. So with the likes of, for example, tokenization, which is something Republic are also leaning a lot more into, where for those that don't know, it's about how do you convert assets into digital tokens on the blockchain. And I think things like that, where they can be traded on a global marketplace, I think it kind of opens up this idea of investors being able to invest on a more global level. There's definitely regulation challenges that prevent investors investing kind of so freely and cross-border at the moment. For VCs, they have to obviously set up typically a subsidiary or invest in startups. It is a bit different, but if you're getting an everyday investor or professional investors, there's definitely regulations around your kind of more traditional investing means. But I'm very excited about the prospect of the likes of tokenization and what that can offer. I think having a more global investor network is a really positive thing for startups. I think it'll give you more visibility. It'll open up your pool of investors. For something like tokenization, it'll also enable you to have more transparency. It gives people more liquidity. So there's a lot of really great upsides to being able to do it. I think we're just a little way off people understanding how we do it or being on board with the ways that we can do it. So I think there's a big education piece still needed for us to get truly global.
And so you talked a little bit about tokenization as sort of an emerging trend that you're seeing. I remember maybe 2-3 years ago, there was the big, SPACs was everything, because that they would enable startups to kind of launch into almost like crowdfunding, right? It was a smaller sort of investment vehicle. What do you think that SPACs and tokenization and some of these AI in investments, do you think these things are here to stay, or do you think they're just sort of trends that are, it's just the way that the landscape is evolving? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I genuinely believe they're here to stay. I think the way that we're developing in certain sectors with AI and the likes of blockchain and Web3, I think the rate that that's accelerating and the doors that can open and what it means for the startup ecosystem is really powerful. And I think once we progress kind of within those areas, I don't think we'll kind of look back on it. And I think they are here to stay because they are so beneficial for startups, investors, and businesses generally. So I think they'll be around for a long time. They'll obviously evolve, but they will be around for a while.
Yeah. And do you think the risks, the rewards outweigh the risks with those kind of new technologies?
Yeah, and I think there's so many different types, right? So I think there's going to always be ones that have bigger upside than others. And I think there's a need for more regulation within these certain sectors because I think there's a lot of people that come in to these sectors not doing it properly and then can give it a bad name. We've seen that in crypto, for example, and the possibilities, and it just makes everyone go backwards instead of progressing forwards. So I think having better regulation will be beneficial, but I think it's going to just take a lot of combined effort between people who are advancing in this and then things like government, which are typically more hesitant. But I think certain regions will progress quicker than others.
And so lastly, what role do you believe startup support organizations and innovation ecosystem builders play in empowering founders and entrepreneurs to navigate the complexities of fundraising?
Oh, huge. It's exactly that point on it takes a community to raise a startup. I think as a founder, you're not expected to know everything. So definitely don't think you should know everything. Lean into other people's knowledge and these startup ecosystems that are going, these communities, these people like OneValley, people like Republic, they're here to help you and guide you. They've been doing it for years. So lean into that, lean into those communities, get as much support, and don't be afraid to ask for support either. People always take it on themselves as founders, like, I'm going to do everything and make this, work. You don't need to. Just get other people to do it. Delegate. It's the easiest way.
Yeah, that's sound advice. I know a lot of founders struggle with if I don't, nobody will spend as much time on my business as I will, nobody will work as hard as I will. And that may be true to some extent, just because the emotional investment that you have in your company is very different from somebody else. But there are enough people out there, if you just ask, who are more than willing to help you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. Really enjoyed talking to you and learning so much. I think you've shared some really insightful information around, fundraising and the alternative options that are available. And really, it sounds like sort of the core message of your, of our conversation is just ask for help. And there are other people that are always willing to help you. And there's always a way, right? There's always a way to get the funding that you need.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.